Hello, folks. This is your host, Tammy Turner, and you are now listening to the Tiara Talk Show. We bring you rare interviews with the makers of Disney magic. Whether they be singers, actors, Imagineers, animators, they've all made their mark on the Disney name. To find out more about the show and other episodes, head to our official website at www.thetiaratalkshow.com. Be sure to look below at the show notes in the Show More section for links to our Twitter and Facebook pages, including videos and websites mentioned in the following interview. Photos and audio clips that are featured in the show belong to their rightful owners and are used for educational purposes only. All guest opinions are theirs and theirs alone and do not represent the opinions of the Tiara Talk Show or the host. The Tiara Talk Show is not associated with the Disney Company. Thanks again for tuning in to this week's episode, and from all of us here at the Tiara Talk Show, have a hoop-de-doo day. I'm excited to welcome this week's Tiara Talk Show cast member corner guest, actress and singer Marie Burke. Welcome, Jill.
Hi, I'm glad to be on today.
Oh, I'm glad to have you here. And for listeners who have never heard our cast member corner segments, basically we speak to cast members of the Disney theme parks from all around the world about their stories working for the Disney Company. So, Jill, you got the chance to portray three lovely Disney ladies, Ariel, Jasmine, and Pocahontas at the Disneyland theme parks. How did working at Disneyland come about?
I think most people know me as, yes, portraying characters and working in the entertainment department at Disney, but I actually did put in my time at the resort as a ride operator for a couple of years before I transferred into the entertainment department. So I worked mostly in Tomorrowland and a little bit in Fantasyland as a ride operator. So I had gone into college, and I wanted a first kind of steady full-time job. I remember listening on the news, they had this segment that said, why aren't people wanting to work at the happiest place on earth? For some reason, they were kind of experiencing a low application number. And I just kind of caught my attention and went, well, this is it. You always wanted to work at Disneyland, right? So drove myself down there, applied, and got hired within a couple of weeks. And I put in my time as a ride operator, but then always knowing I wanted to go in entertainment, so I kind of stuck it out. I didn't want to terminate and rehire, so I just kind of continued as a ride operator as I went and to auditions. I just basically pursued all the auditions, and it took me about a year or so with auditions, with talent booking, getting to see my face. They were pretty particular at the time. I can't say that they're not particular now, but you always think they were just so specific, so selective at the time. So it took me several months for them to finally say, okay, we'll hire her. to kind of prove myself. And that's when I was hired for Princess Jasmine.
Wow.
At the time, they had the dinner show called Aladdin's Oasis, and that's over there by the Tiki Room, kind of backs up against the Jungle Cruise. I know the venue's still there, and they've turned it into a couple different things since then, but at the time, it was a sit-down dinner show. And the show pretty much was supposed to run about 55 minutes, but sometimes we'd run a little long. The comedians would pretty much designate how long our show was going to run, because there were bits that we pretty much had our sidekicks, and the comedians they were on a roll, and they went off. That 55-minute show went on to be like, who knows, an hour and 5, an hour and 10, they're like, but I couldn't end it. I had them in the palm of my hand. And Jasmine was pretty much like the easiest role on the show. I came out first act, said a couple things, went backstage, sat around, came out the second act a couple of times, had a magic trick, sang A Whole New World, and the show was over. It was the easiest show of all. And I was like, God, it's a principal role. It was wonderful. I did that for a solid year. So everybody sat through dinner, sat through dessert, and they're like, okay, we're waiting for the song. And then finally at the very end, Jasmine comes out. she's reunited with Aladdin, and they sing the song, and then bam, show's over, and then that was it. We did 5 shows a day. 5 shows a day of that.
Wow. Did you do any breakfast shows?
Oh, yeah, I mean, now that I think about it, I mean, I guess they were considered, I guess the first couple of shows might have been considered luncheon, because we would get there about 10 or 11 in the morning. First show was probably maybe noon. And last show, we wouldn't get out of there till 9. Those were pretty much the longest entertainment. No, I take that back. That wasn't the longest day. I'll get to that. But they were long days. So first show might have been 12:30. Last show might have been starting at 7:30, 8 o'clock. So Not breakfast shows, but I guess they might have considered those lunch shows. I know I say a dinner show, but pretty much it was a full meal, sit-down meal show. The venue since then has seen a couple of different shows, meaning just more character department shows. It hasn't been any kind of live entertainment shows there in years. But, you know, they like I say, I got hired like January and then made it through until the following January. The show was actually running probably 6 to 8 months, though, I believe it, before I got hired. So the show itself, I think, ran 2 years. And then I got brought in about halfway into it. And then it was over. and then I was like, oh, I'm jobless. What am I going to do? And then the next character was Ariel. So now that's a little different. You know, the live stage shows that they have at the El Capitan up in Hollywood. That's where I was hired to do Ariel, at the El Capitan Theater on Hollywood Boulevard, which pretty much exclusively shows all of Disney or Buena Vista or Holly Pictures films. And a lot of times during the summer, with the ticket price, you'll get a live 20-minute pre-show before each film. And so those were long days, because you might get there at 10:30 in the morning and literally you don't leave until 10:30 at night. And anybody who's done the LCAP job knows it's 20-minute show, 2-hour break.
Wow.
20-minute show, 2-hour break.
Oh my goodness.
So, and then do that from, June until end of August, depending. And that's when, let's see, if I played Ariel, that was the opening summer. That was when Pocahontas opened. So during the 20-minute show, I was sitting on my little kind of shell unit, as you say. It was in the opera box, and they push out this unit, and I'm seat belted in. I go out and I sing part of your world, a edited version, a bridge version, sing. Audience was great, and then I got wheeled back in, and then it was like a big review. Typically, it was like Ariel did something, then they had a little bit of Mary Poppins, or they had a flying carpet of Jasmine and Aladdin. It was 20 minutes of just live performances. And then it was Pocahontas. So there was probably 5 showings a day, I believe. That was a five movie day. And that was when I did Ariel. Actually, then the following summer, I did Pocahontas there, because that's when Hunchback of Notre Dame film came out. So it was like, oh, good, cool summer job. You're young, you're in your 20s, you're like, great, I can bank all this money, and it's wonderful the people you get to work with and the experience. It's like a lot of times more than you'd ever learn going to college. This was practical experience on the job. It was just wonderful training ground, basically.
Can you talk a little bit about the rehearsals for Spirit of Pocahontas and also the Aladdin show that you got to do and the Little Mermaid show?
The rehearsals for the Aladdin's Oasis, it's funny, just when I was brought in for that rehearsal period, it was about a 2-week rehearsal period, and it was on site, so it was actually, those rehearsals took place at Disneyland in one of the rehearsal halls. And I was actually hired as a sub at the time. So they needed a new group of people, Some people had probably left. They needed to replenish people that had left. And I was hired as a Jasmine sub in January. And some of the people I remember that I was hired with, I mean, I'm still in touch with those people now. I've known them for, 20 years or so. We were all just kind of hired as subs. And 2 weeks worth. I do remember during that rehearsal period was when the big Northridge earthquake happened.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm laughing, but I remember it was a hassle because most of the people were living in the valley at the time. And then rehearsals were done. We were signed off. I came in, had subbed in a little bit. I believe it was either March or April was one of their main scheduled Jasmines. Was, if you look at a 7-day work week, they have like a 4-day or a 5-day Jasmine and like a 2-day Jasmine, whatever they had decided. One of the girls, I believe, had moved over to the Beauty and the Beast show. So they're like, we have a spot open. And I remember I said, yeah. And I remember my mom was so happy about it. Oh, my God. My mom was she was more thrilled about it than I was. And then I just ended up, that's when I jumped in and I finished the show until it closed. The rehearsal period for El Cap, most of those rehearsals were up in L.A. The most interesting part of the rehearsal period for the El Capitan Theater is when you get into the space, into the theater itself. Since they're running movies during the day, our rehearsal period's in the middle of the night. We might show up to rehearsal at 1, 2 in the morning and go till 9, 10 in the morning.
Wow. That's late and early in the morning.
Yeah, I mean, then they do the same thing for the park. Spirit of Pocahontas, I had gone in to actually audition for the Hunchback of Notre Dame show.
Wow.
had spent 8 hours in L.A., cut at the very end, made it to the very end, and someone approached me and said, can you stick around and sing for Pocahontas? The show had already been running, I don't know, maybe less than a year. And I had kind of given up. I had thought, there's no way they're going to hire me for Pocahontas. I'm like, I don't look like her enough or whatever. I just didn't have any big hopes on that. Even though I know wig and makeup, it can make a huge difference. I'm great at that. Wig and makeup is an entire transformation. So I spent another 5 hours or so at kind of a sort of last-minute invite-only Pocahontas audition. And I think 11:45 that night, they're like, hey, you got the job. Can you go over to the other studio and get fitted? It was so anticlimactic at the end. I was like, wait, you tell me I got Pocahontas. I didn't get the Hunchback show. And then the rehearsal period was, again, at the park on the stage, 5 shows a day. And that show length was about, I want to say it was 45 minutes. I don't think it was that long, maybe 40-minute show in 105-degree weather. And there was a fire pit on stage, so that was the most challenging, I think, all around, vocally and physically. Yeah, the entrance was, for Pocahontas, she'd actually come through the pond. So literally you're climbing up under the stage, and the whole effect was the dry ice, the smoke. And they would remove this, which was kind of like a lid. It was a trap door. They'd open it up, and there'd be stairs, and you'd come up through the pond, and then up through the dry ice, the smoke, and then she'd appear, and then she'd run center stage. Sometimes there'd be just a little condensation, just the dry ice or whatever the smoke was made out of. I forget what they used, but only one time did I slip. The character, my father, caught me. But in a full theater, to just hear that I stopped and I just kind of looked backwards like, that was close. And then just continue on. There was no time to react because the music's running and you've got to time out your dialogue. No room for improvising at that point.
It's the best thing about live theater because anything can happen and it's just really you as the performer in the audience. And it's great because kids are introduced to live performances early on with a Disney show, especially in a Disney park. But this is a great introduction for them for live theater.
That's a perfect opportunity for them, especially when it finally got dark, is when those shows would really look beautiful. It's always the last show where you can actually see the light, see the lighting design, make it more intimate. And yeah, for kids, it's like the first closest thing they'd ever see to like a true, theatrical experience. And during the day, it'd be nice. You could look down at the front row and see a mixture of friends, annual pass holders, and what you're really looking for, just the kids anyway. But once the show's happening at night and it's dark and you really can't see anybody, then it is. It's just like being on stage. And everybody paid attention, and it got really quiet. The evening shows were great.
More realistic. I've seen plenty of copies of the Disneyland production at night.
Totally. I mean, then you'd have your spotlights on. You'd see what the lighting design was meant to look like. I mean, I know as far as the colors for Pocahontas in the show, and it wasn't like a super colorful show. There was a lot of detail that was missing during the day, and you could actually see that at night. Do you remember? I loved the wig at the Pocahontas show at the park, man. It was a fall. Everybody's hair looked really natural because it was our own hair in front, and it was teased in and combed in and meshed into a fall in the back. And the costume for Pocahontas there at the park was pretty sturdy, real leather. The jewelry was pretty sturdy, and they would actually spray that tattoo on. No, you were definitely a little doted on there for Pocahontas. She was the star for that show.
Do you have a funny story for each character that you've played in the parks, as well as working on the ride attractions?
The funny story about Pocahontas is, the funny one is, because, again, you were talking about live theater. You had mentioned you never know what you're going to see, or you never know what's going on, and there's always stuff going on that stage that the audience had no idea. Stuff that, nobody should really have any idea what was going on. But during the summer, those big, ugly, green, metallic-y looking blind beetles that fly around that always just come out during the summer, and they're harmless, but they're big, and they fly around and they bump into things, and they just loved our stage. Pocahontas is supposed to love nature and love all the insects and the animals of the world. Well, that one beetle decided to land on me one show. I could see it flying around, and you can't wave it away. You're in the middle of a song. You can't be just waving it away and have some child in the front row traumatized that you nailed this beetle. So you ignore it, and I'm flying around, and I realized I didn't see it anymore, and I said, oh gosh, it landed on me. I know dang well it landed on me. Finishing the end of Colors of the Wind, have my scene with John Smith. I'm not off stage yet, but the whole time I'm like, this beetle's on me. It's on me. I don't know where it went, and I want it off me now. I run off stage. Hopefully they muted my mic, and I run to the costume ladies, and then I'm screaming my head off, and I'm like, get this beetle off of me! Get it off me! I have like 2 minutes before I got to go back on stage. Jill, what are you talking about? There's a beetle on me. It's on me. I know it. They're like, oh, Jill, we know what you're talking about. I'm like, look. And I lift up my arm, and they're digging through the fringe of my dress. They're like, oh, Jill, we don't see anything. I don't see any. Oh, there he is. Oh, some beetle had just kind of nestled himself up into my fringe under my arm in my dress. I'm not a fan of bugs and beetles and spiders. So
yeah, neither am I.
Playing Ariel at El Cap was not vocally challenging, and it was way more fun with the audience. The whole, I want to be where the people are, blah, 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 walking along down there, well, what's that word again? And it's like, straight! That was always the best part. You get to the 10:30 show at night. Okay, it's 10:30 at night in Hollywood. Your audience is going to be rowdy or strange or who knows. Sometimes you might perform for 10 people in the whole theater. The dinner show, Jasmine had a magic trick where she's in a box and the box closes and she disappears. You're supposed to do all of this with one hand. You have one hand hanging outside the box waving a handkerchief, and you're inside the box, and you have to do all this other stuff with the other hand. You had to lift the trap door, take your wig off, and throw it down the chute. Then crawl into the chute, and then kind of just be just at the very down bottom end of the chute, and then they pull the handkerchief away from your other hand, and you just slide down. It's basically all the Jasmines needed to be pretty tiny because they needed to slide down this slide, which are the stairs, is what you see. You know, a total illusion. Just one of the funny things, and his name's Dirk. If Dirk is listening, I doubt he would. Dirk's gone on to wonderful Emmy-winning things out in Hollywood, but he was one of our, I believe he was running audio for our show, but he loved to do horrible things to me. And at one point when I was sitting in the chute waiting to slide down, he had a vacuum cleaner up onto my legs and feet. I'm screaming my head off. The music's playing. I'm sure the audience could hear it. And I was getting vacuumed down the chute by this. This is what the techs were doing. We had fun with that one. Too much fun. Every summer you would pick your shift. You try and pick the shift you wanted for the summer season. So I worked Utopia for an entire summer. I worked Space Mountain for an entire summer. The only fun stuff is when, you know, celebrities would come on. They'd always get kind of the backdoor treatment, and they'd always got to get in the front row or request their own rocket or something, you know. I remember John Stamos came. I was doing, at Captain EO. Some early morning, not many people were around. John Stamos comes up with a couple of friends. I could tell who he was, and I have a name tag on. He comes up. He's like, "So, Jill, when's the next Captain EO film?" And I just look at him, and I'm like, "Well, John, the next showing is blah, blah, blah." And it's like, duh, I know who you are. He didn't even bat an eye. He's fine. After seeing him that day, I noticed that he would just kind of frequent the park. He would come in all the time. And I was like, okay, well, you know, we got a fan. Little things like that. I think it was the celebrity stuff was always maybe more of a highlight of working on the rides.
And now for our 3 questions that we'd like to ask all our guests that come on the show. They're called the Fab 3 questions. So our Donald one is, as a child, what was your favorite Disney film to watch over and over again?
Snow White. I just freak out. That was just the freak out, hear it, the songs, whatever.
And our goofy question, what Disney character do you think would be your best friend if you met them in person?
I don't know why Cruella de Vil comes to mind. I find the goodness in her. I would love to meet Cruella de Vil.
Always has the great fashion. Sometimes the Disney villains are pretty cool. I like Hades, so.
Yeah, I'm just like, Cruella de Vil? Oh, yeah, you know. I mean, it'd be my best, worst friend.
And our Mickey question, if I asked you to name any Disney song at this very moment, what immediately comes to mind?
Someday My Prince Will Come. I mean, that's, again, it's either that one or When You Wish Upon a Star. To me, you just can't get more Disney than that. That was my generation. I'd have the long LP playing, and we played on the record player that you can open up, and that was, you know, my experience.
But thank you so much, Jill, for coming on the show. This has been a wonderful time having you on Cast Member Corner. Listeners, I just want to let you know that you can head to Jill's website, check out some songs that she's sung before, some videos, also her resume, which is at www.jillmarieburke.com. It will be in the show notes below this video. Before we head out to the river bend, I just wanted to ask you to tell me a word that comes to mind when you think about working for the Disney company, as all 3 Disney girls, also as a ride operator.
Memorable or magical? The 2 M's, both of them. If I could blend those 2 words together, it's memorable and magical.
He wants me to be steady like the river, but the river isn't steady at all.